What is going on today? I am doing part 2 of a series that I started. Who knows how long this is going to be? Talking about fear, and the title I have given it is Face Everything and Rise. There are lots of different acronyms we could use for fear. Some people say fear is forget everything and run, or false evidence appearing real, but we're going with fear as face everything and rise. So now when I pause this, you all see me. Is that correct? Nod? No? Are you still seeing the screen? Are you still seeing the PowerPoint? Or are you seeing me? You're seeing the PowerPoint even though it's paused. Okay. Alrighty, resume share. Okay, I'm waiting on a beautiful prayer that I received on the minister's listserv that was just beautiful that I wanted to share with you. But I think maybe we'll just wait on that. And I'm just going to get into the meat of what I wanted to talk about this morning. So let me go backwards here. Our theme for the year is Mystics, Masters, and Paths of Enlightenment. And I think I'm going to maybe, it's probably not cool to reword that, but it's really about rising above our belief systems, which, I use not the acronym, but the initials BS, right? Rising above the BS. And sometimes our belief systems are helpful, and sometimes they're not. So I'm not here to tell you what you need to believe, but simply to encourage you to examine those beliefs whenever you can and decide if they actually work for you or not. So I see that I hear, if you hear it too, that the prayer came through. So I'm going to just grab it from the copier. No, actually, my wonderful tech assistant is going to bring it to me. And we're on. Thank you, Richard. Richard rocks. Richard's amazing. All right, so take time and take a deep breath. I think I need a deep breath too. And I'm going to invite you to turn your attention within for a moment. And if that means closing your eyes, that's great. If not, you can just relax and sit in your seat and listen to these words. So take a moment to breathe deeply, not taking that breath for granted this morning, because we know there are people that are all around the globe right now, literally and figuratively struggling to breathe in this moment. So take that time to now breathe in peace and breathe out peace. Breathe in love and breathe out love. Breathe in gratitude and breathe out gratitude. So we take this moment to acknowledge and appreciate the gift of the breath. The first gift that we were given when we enter into this earthly existence, and it's the last thing we leave behind when we make our exit. Throughout all of our lives, the breath is a constant companion, a reminder of the invisible, omniscient, omnipotent presence that is the essence of life itself. I'm a unique expression of that magnificent presence, as is everyone within the sound of my voice. And because I am part of that magnificent universal presence, as I claim my word for myself, I also claim it for everyone within the sound of my voice. I thank Reverend Cynthia James out of Colorado for the prayer that I'm going to share. We recognize our humanity and the vulnerability of this moment. We honor all feelings and concerns. However, with this in mind, we gently and lovingly turn over any old ways of being, any old doubts, fears, or paradigms. We are reminded that these old ways are nothing but energy and information trying to hold humanity hostage. We will not be moved. We will not succumb to any old thought forms that do not serve health and well-being. We turn away from calls to withdraw, to hide, to lash out or judge, and we dare to stand for love and the healing power of the infinite. We boldly declare, get thee behind me, fear. Get thee behind me, doubt. Get thee behind me, discouragement. Get thee behind me, lack of faith. We courageously declare, God is the answer to every question. Love is the soothing power available in every moment. Peace resides at the center of our being. Nothing opposes spirit. Nothing overpowers the universe. Nothing dissolves the eternal light of the universe. And so we lift up every man, woman, and child. We lift up every nation. We lift up this planet. We lift up every healthcare worker. We lift up every first responder. We lift up every leader. We lift up every spiritual community. We lift up every caregiver. We lift every business. We lift every homeless individual, and we call every dis-ease an opportunity to return to center, to return to love, and to return to wholeness on every level. And so I give thanks. Gratitude fills my being and floods every cell, my mind, and my body. I'm bathed in a sea of unconditional love that claims and proclaims the peace that passes all understanding. I bond with my brothers and sisters as we all surrender to a deeper knowing than has ever existed in our collective conscious awareness. And from this place, I let go. I joyously release this prayer into the loving arms of the law and trust beyond measure that the prayer was answered even before the first word was spoken. And I release this with joy and with gratitude, knowing it is already done. And join me in saying, and so it is. That was worth waiting for, wasn't it? So back to our topic of the day, face everything and rise. I want to do a little bit of review. I don't know how many people are tuning in for the first time, but we are talking about this idea of enlightenment and what that means. And I love, there's a quote by Ashanti who says that enlightenment, it's not about becoming something new, something different. Enlightenment is really about releasing the things that no longer serve us. Enlightenment is a destructive process, and certainly we're having an opportunity for that here lately. So to talk about belief systems and what is this idea when I say I want for us to be able to rise above the belief systems, to rise above the BS. What is a belief system? But an ideology. It's a worldview. It's the way that we interpret reality and the world around us and figure out where we belong. What's our place in that? And our core beliefs are formed when we're children. Those belief systems are shaped and they're influenced by our experiences, our own personal experiences, but also the experiences of our loved ones, the values and beliefs of our family, of our culture, of our religious communities, of our the society in general. And that's where we come up with our belief systems. And sometimes we have belief systems that serve us, and sometimes we have belief systems that don't. And it's always for us to make that determination. So I'm not trying to say that you need to release all of your belief systems, but rather take some time to really examine them and not ask if they're true or if they're not true, but is this serving me? Is this serving me? And there's so many belief systems that are showing themselves right now to be not sustainable or not helpful for the vast majority of people. And it's time for us to start looking at those. So I found this quote from Albert Einstein, that the most important decision we make is whether we believe we live in a friendly or a hostile universe. Both those things are belief systems. Whether you think we live in a friendly world or you think we live in a world that's out to get us, both of those are belief systems. And I'm not saying one is true over the other, but it definitely makes a difference in how we carry ourselves and how we move through life when we're looking at it from that lens. And I think Albert Einstein, who was a brilliant human being, was probably right on target with that statement, that the most important decision we make is, do we live in a friendly universe or not? So you can imagine your whole way of being and walking and talking and moving through the world is different based on how you interpret that. So there's lots of belief systems going on. As I said, there's lots of fear happening. And last week I talked about fear as the basic emotion of our brain. So I'm just going to do a little bit of review. And if you want to go into this a little more deeply, feel free to check out that recording from last week. I should have put my phone on mute. Anyway, so yes, fear is the basic emotion of the brain. If you remember, I told you about this using your hand as a model for the brain. Like, imagine this is your brain stem, the thumb is the midbrain, and the brain stem is the part that manages all of the things you don't think about, like your heart rate and your breathing, the automatic things that thank goodness we don't have to think about those things, right? The next part is the midbrain, and that's where we have our fight, flight, and freeze. And then this part on the outside is what we call the neocortex, and that's the part that's responsible for reason and language and higher function thinking. So fear, when something threatens us, it can trigger that fight, flight, or freeze response. And what I say is that, or not myself, I didn't come up with this analogy, is the idea of flipping your lid. When something makes you really scared, when something feels very threatening for you, you go into a mode of fight, flight, or freeze. And it's like the parts of your brain kind of disconnect. The thinking, logical, reasoning part of your brain is no longer connected with the rest of your brain. And that's why you forget words, you forget the things you wanted to say. You kind of just lose all rational thought and your thinking gets very, very tunnel visioned. There's even a whole TV series called Snapped that's about people whose fight, flight, and freeze has taken over and they're literally, flip their lid. That's what we call this. So fear is there, obviously, for our survival. We know that we can override it. You don't have to let yourself get to the point where you've completely flipped your lid. You can, as you feel yourself inching up in fear, do things to stop yourself before it flips and you're out of your right thinking mind. So we can override that fear. Let's say you're walking out in the yard and you see something move or something curvy in the grass, and your first instinct is fear, to jump back from it because maybe it looks like a snake. And then you realize, oh no, that's just a hose. So you can override that fear, bring your, instead of flipping your lid, bring it back down and breathe again. We also know that fear, because it has a purpose, it causes, when you get into that fight, flight, or freeze response, there's a whole cascade of hormones and things that are happening in your body that's getting you ready for action, that's getting you ready to move. And so suppressing all of that stuff can be actually damaging to your health. To pretend or to say that you're not afraid when in fact you really are, it's especially when the threats are more existential threats than actual physical threats. Our wiring is still the same as it was from the caveman days. So we're not running from lions and tigers these days, where our fears come from, am I going to have a job? Am I going to be able to provide for my family? We have fear now, this huge fear with the coronavirus, like there's danger lurking at every corner, everybody is potentially carrying it. So suppressing those feelings of fear is not necessarily healthy for us. Now, there are ways that we can dissipate that fear that is more healthful, that is more helpful for our health. And so that was the basis of my talk last week, was what is the thing that human beings are meant to do to dissipate that fear when it comes on or when you start feeling it. And every creature has its way that it handles fear, that when it does that action, that fear then dissipates. So the deer runs or it freezes, the mouse burrows in a hole, the bird flies away, a tiger or a lion charges. Each creature has its thing. And when I ask the question, what is it that human beings are meant to do when we're in the face of fear? And I know when I was first asked that question, I was really stumped because I wanted to go to fight, flight, or freeze. But if you think of how we come into this world as infants, completely helpless, we don't have the option of fight, flight, or freeze. The only thing an infant can do is cry. And the reason the infant cries is obviously because it's not comfortable, but because that is a signal that the baby needs help, and for mom or caregiver to come and pick up baby. And as the child grows and gets older, now I'm looking myself, my 2-year-old grandsons, when they're afraid, what do? They want to run to somebody who can take care of them. They want to see mom, they want to see dad, they want to see grandma. They get that, okay, that hug, that whatever it is that they need to say you're okay. And the fear dissipates, and then they go and they play again until something happens, and then they can run back and get that, that protection and connection, and know that they're okay. So that's what we talked about last week. And then I've been giving you some tips for coping, because there's a lot of fear. And I don't know about you all, but I'm guessing that you're not really that much different than I am. And I know that I feel like I'm on somewhat of a roller coaster. I have those moments of feeling like I'm really okay. I've got a handle on this. I'm feeling good and confident and full of hope and faith and all of that. And then I may read something or hear a story and I'm going like this, So I think fear is going to be a fairly constant, or at least nearby companion for the weeks and months to come. So I think it's helpful, and at least this is what I'm trying to do, to give everyone some ideas for how to deal with that fear. So some tips for coping. Number 1, examine the thing that you're afraid of. I was encouraging people to find out all you can about this coronavirus. There's a whole series on Netflix. You guys haven't seen it. It's called Pandemic. And while it's not about coronavirus, it is about this idea of pandemics and how they spread and what makes one more dangerous than another and so on. So really, instead of running from the thing that you're afraid of, my encouragement is to really look at it, like really directly look at it and see how much of your fear is legitimate, how much of it is stuff that's made up. Knowledge is power, so examine the thing you're afraid of. Number 2, really honor your body. Know where you're at. Feel your feelings, your feelings. This is number 2, acknowledge and feel those feelings. Your feelings show up in your physiology. When you're happy, there's a physical feeling that goes with happiness. When you're angry, there are physical feelings that go with anger. There are physical feelings that go with sadness and fear and all of that. That's how we know what we're feeling. Just many of us are disconnected, or we've been taught that feelings aren't good, or some of them are unacceptable. My encouragement is to allow yourself to feel whatever the heck it is you're feeling. And even anxiety, if you look up the literature, things when you get those feelings of fear or whatever it is, unless there's a real clear and present danger in front of you, most fear can come and ride through your system in about 1.5 minutes. Same thing with sadness. If you allow yourself to feel whatever it is within a few minutes, you can just let that feeling ride through and not let it get stuck in your system and cause all kinds of damage by either pushing it down or just blowing up. So let the feelings move through you. Establish and or maintain spiritual practices. I hope you all have some kind of practice that you do, whether it's taking a few minutes in the morning to just breathe, or we talked about washing your hands, like use that as a moment for mindfulness. just things that are going to connect you to the moment, because that's another key thing. The things that we are afraid of are things maybe that we're reminded from of the past, of how things went one time, that maybe is going to happen again, or worries about the future that isn't here. The best way to deal with the anxiety, with whatever it is that's going on, is to just be in the moment, because right now we have everything we need. Right now you're okay. Right now I'm okay. Everything is okay. Just bring back to the moment. And when you think about it, you've always had everything you needed, or you wouldn't be here right now in this moment with me. The last thing, to maintain positive, I added the word positive social connections, because yes, we all need connection, and yes, it is part of our hard wiring. It's part of what we need. People need connection, even more than some of the physical things. You know, when you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where we've got all those physical things at the bottom, you know, of needing food and shelter and so on and so forth. And yes, all of those things are important, vital, right? But people will forego food. People will forego their own physical safety. In fact, people will put themselves deliberately in dangerous situations because of the strength of their connections. Think about a mother, a father, you know, who sees that their child is in danger. You know, they're going to do what they need to do to take care of their child. That's the strength of the love and the social connections that will even have people put their own health and well-being at risk. So our social connections are vital. But in this time, and for our best coping, we want to have positive social connections as much as possible. And for people who are right now with their families, maybe spending a little more or a whole lot more time than they're used to, we need to be mindful of the quality of those connections, and doing our best to make them the best that they can. Because, you know, feelings, emotions are contagious. And if you're connecting with people that are a downer, that are people that are continually doom and gloom, it's going to rub off on you. So be careful of the associations that you have. And social distancing doesn't have to mean social isolation. In fact, I think we should call it physical distancing rather than social distancing, because we want to make sure that we maintain good, positive social connections, because that's what we need to help, is going to help us cope with what's in front of us. So that's all like the psychological, physiological stuff about fear. What I want to do today is take it down a level into the more spiritual aspects of fear. Pause the sharing here. Now, are you all seeing me? Or are you seeing me? Say yes, Mary Lou, or are you still seeing the screen? The screen. Okay, well, I'll just keep on going then, because it's not helping to pause. So
we just see a screen with 4 blocks of color.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to get it where I'm going back and forth between you see me or you see the screen, but that's just not, I haven't mastered that yet. So again, what I want to talk about is taking it down a deeper level and talk about the spiritual aspects of dealing with fear and hope. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, is hope and faith as the antidote to fear, because we know that fear and faith cannot exist in the same place. Hope and fear don't exist in the same place. But there are sometimes hope and faith get a bad name because they're not always based in reality. So what I'm going to show you is a continuum of hope, and then we're going to talk about faith. So what do I mean by hope is a continuum? All right. Hope is made up of two different things, right? The first thing is our grasp of reality. right? There are people, or we can be in denial, we can have a distorted view of reality, and it's on a continuum if you're looking along the bottom here, all the way from being uninformed and being in denial to being very informed and being very accurate with what is so.
Cindy, we're still seeing tips for coping.
Really? Resume share.
Okay, now I see the grasp of reality.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Thank you for saying that. So again, you go from being in denial all the way to being very informed and accurate and everything in between. And then hope, it also depends on your outlook. So there are people who can be very, very negative, all the way to people who are very, very positive. And so a person who has, let's say, a very informed, very accurate view of reality, but is also negative, is in that kind of surrendered state in which they've lost hope. So we're going to go around, we're just going to make a loop here. Then you've got a person who's got a distorted view of reality and is also negative. Those people have no hope. Now, this is where I think hope gets a bad name. When you have people that are in denial, or they have a distorted view or an uninformed view of reality, and they're very positive, we call that wishful thinking. And that is where false hope comes from. And then we have the people who are informed and have an accurate view and are positive, and those people are committed, and that is where we have real hope. Real hope. This is, again, part of the reason that I encourage you all to really inform yourselves about COVID-19 and understanding how it is transmitted, and how it's not, so that you have an accurate view of reality. And there's lots of reason to be positive, even with what's going on. So I want to share some of those things. So we see that hope is not wishful thinking. Wishful thinking is the kind of belief or way of being that gives hope a bad name. So hope, we know, is a combination of a positive outlook with a firm grasp on reality. To be hopeful, that's a way of being that people can learn. It's a thing that we can practice, and it's also something that can be taught. In other words, it's not a given, like you come into this life with a certain way of being, and either you're an optimist or a pessimist. You really do get an opportunity to choose. Now, your wiring may have you predisposed to one or the other, but the fact is that you can choose when you recognize that it is part of a belief system and not just the way it is. And then the last thing, hope is the belief that things can get better and that we can make them better. I think that's really vital. Now, if I move this over here, do you see better? Or were you able to see before? Okay, great. All right. So I wanted to share with you a few things that for me just give me so much hope in the midst of all the crazy that we're seeing around us, and I just pulled these different pictures from the news and from what's going on. If you look at the just numbers of people who are stepping up, that are, as I said, putting themselves deliberately in harm's way to help their fellow man, it's just incredible. Here we have more than 9,000 retired Army medical personnel responded to the call for assistance. That's on top of all of the traveling nurses and medical professionals. Shout out to our girls, to Donna and Norma, who are, as you probably all know, in the epicenter in New York City, with hundreds or thousands of other people who have shown up to help. It's really quite beautiful. You know, there's a meme going around I saw on Facebook that there's all this fear of like the zombie apocalypse and how awful people were going to be if something like this happened. And it's really been quite the opposite. It's given people the opportunity to step up and contribute in ways maybe they never even imagined. There are new innovations happening all the time, all the time. This is just one of them, Dyson. I'm gonna get a Dyson vacuum cleaner, I'm telling you, when this is done. Designed a new ventilator in 10 days. The company's making 15,000 now. Maybe that number is gonna go up, but how many people have used their creativity to find solutions? There's a doctor out of UF that found a new way to make masks that are very effective and inexpensive and can be done quickly. And there's just so many innovations happening right now. This seems to be good news all over the planet. We're seeing the results of pollution and how quickly the planet has been healing itself, right? The ozone layer is healing. You can see pictures all over the place of the canals in Venice clearing up, of pollution clearing up in China and over LA and so many places. It's just incredible. You know, we can't say that there's nothing we can't do about it. We know there are things that we can do. It's being shown to us right here every day. And this one, gosh, this one just brought me to tears when I saw it. I just want to read you what this was about. A Muslim and Jewish paramedics pausing to pray together, one of the many inspiring moments in the coronavirus crisis. So this came from CNN. We've got these two gentlemen, Abraham Mitz and Zohar Abu Jamaa, that just finished responding to a call. And it talks about the different people that they interacted with. And as the clock neared 6 in the afternoon, Mintz and Abu Jamaa realized that it might be the only break on their shift. So they took a pause to pray. Mintz is a religious Jew. He stood facing Jerusalem, his white and black prayer shawl hanging off his shoulders, and Abu Jamaa, an observant Muslim, knelt facing Mecca with his maroon prayer rug unfurled underneath him. For the two paramedics who routinely worked together 2 or 3 times a week, this joint prayer was nothing new. But for many others, it was an inspiring image in the midst of this global pandemic. So there are many, many good things that are coming out of this, and there's a lot of reason to be hopeful. So now we go to this idea of faith. So I think hope and faith are on the same continuum. Space. I didn't mean to bring that there. Hope and faith are on the same continuum. And we in New Thought, I'll tell you what my experience with those two words is, that there are a lot of people in New Thought that feel like hope is kind of, like it's not where we want to be. That hope is not the full-fledged of being faithful. Like, why be hopeful when you can be in faith? And my feeling, my personal thing about this is that it is a continuum, and most people can't jump from disbelief to faith. There has to be that step in between of, well, I don't believe this, but you know, maybe there's a little glimmer here that I can grab onto that to hope, right? I may not have the full-fledged faith of saying, I know this to be so, but I can be hopeful about something. And so the best definition that I have found for faith, my personal favorite, comes from Hebrews 11, that faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith is the substance of things hoped for, meaning that hope is part of faith. So faith also gets a bad rap, and that's when people use words like blind faith. Blind faith being that a person is having faith or believing what they've been told because of where the message comes from. In other words, not really investigating it for themselves and just saying, I have faith because this is what my religious tradition tells me, or this is what this authority figure has said. And I just encourage you all to realize that step in between there of realistic hope on your way to getting to that place of faith, and never having blind faith, never having blind faith. To me, faith is when we can see beyond what the circumstances would indicate. For example, my faith in this situation is that there is going to be good that comes of this. I know that humanity is going to rally. I know that the world is going to keep spinning. I have total, absolute faith in those things. And I have hope for some others. You know, I can't say I have that same level of faith about some other things that are going on. Like as I said, feel that great good is going to come of this, but it's not going to be easy getting to that point, getting to the other side. But having that faith, perhaps that things are going to get better, makes it easier to travel the terrain when it gets really difficult. So faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not yet seen. I love this quote from Ernest Holmes, who is the founder of this movement we call Science of Mind, aka Centers for Spiritual Living. And he said this: fear and faith are not so different as we have thought. Each is a positive mental attitude of acceptance about something. Fear is accepting that which we do not wish to experience, and faith accepts that which we do wish to experience. Let's see. It will be easy for us to convert fear to faith when we realize that in doing so, we are not dealing with two powers, but merely with two ways of using the one power. So let me break that down. Fear and faith are the same action. They're just heading in different directions. Fear, well, let me take it back another step. It is done unto us as we believe, right? That's what Jesus said in the Bible. It is done unto us as we believe. Some of us believe that terrible things are going to happen, and that's being in fear. That's using your faith, your belief for what can be in a fearful way, versus using that power of belief to say that something good is going to come out of it. And so it is done unto us as we believe. If you believe and you put your attention on the thing that you're afraid is going to happen, your outlook and your approach and your way of living is going to be very different than someone who is using their faith to affirm the good that they want to experience, right? To bring it back to the Einstein quote, do you believe in a friendly or a hostile universe? That's the core right there. And then he says this about faith: it is difficult to think peace in the midst of pain, to rise to a consciousness of joy in the midst of grief, or to believe in good when evil seems more apparent. Yet the one who knew declared that we cannot serve two masters. And who he's talking about here is Christ, right? That we cannot serve two masters. We cannot be in fear and faith at the same time. We all know how difficult it is to turn from doubt to faith. And yet this is exactly what he has told us to do. So in these moments, we hold that faith that things will get better, that things can get better, and that we will be guided and led as needed. I have that faith as well. I can say that without a shadow of a doubt, that I know that I am always divinely guided in all that I think, say, and do. Now, whether I always heed that, that's another issue. But I know that the guidance is always there. I'm just not always in a space to hear it or to accept it or to act on it. Sometimes because of the idea of that fear giving us tunnel vision. So that brings me to the affirmation for today. And I make an affirmation every week. This is for your own personal use. Put it on the refrigerator, or put it in your phone, someplace where you might see it if it speaks to you. And the affirmation that I chose was, I replace doubt with hope, fear with faith, and false beliefs with beliefs that empower me while bringing out the best in others.